Hello, First from the Web. My name is Scar, and this is the story of the growing pains of the furry fandom. Stay tuned. As I have said before, furry fandom is far from mainstream, but it has become a very popular community. Furry fandom is a very old subculture, going back as far as the 1980s. At the beginning, it was a very small and condensed group of fans. The origin and the so-called golden age of furry fandom is almost incomparable to the size we see today. One convention, try over 100. 70 attendees, try 10,000. This is only counting one side of the fandom, the congoers. Furry is also an evolving culture, as I said in previous videos. There were people whose main goal was to just try and bring back the fandom to its roots, and ultimately failed. The ultimate reason for this is because of what happened in the 90s. The creation of things such as the Newsnet newsgroups and Furry Muck changed the fandom. Anyone with internet had access to an untapped interest in many people. The internet is an amazing tool. It connects the world together in an otherwise impossible manner. It was revolutionary for furries and allowed the fandom to grow exponentially. This continued through the 90s and early 2000s as the internet became more available and intuitive. Fandom growth is a double-edged sword. There were all of the obvious upsides to it, but there are a bunch of problems that come along with it as well. There is also a trail of people who have fallen to it and have a growing hostility in the fandom. The fast, unregulated growth of furry is unavoidable. It has been going on for 2 decades and will only continue. Today I'm going to talk about the problems it's caused and what it means for the future of furry fandom. While not widely known about in the fandom by its youth, those who lived through the great internet furry flame war are not soon to forget it. The furry revolution brought on by the massive growth caused many groups to rise who just wanted to preserve the older, more tight-knit days of the fandom. Eventually, because of the culture shifts, the state of conference rumors, and Squeerat's personal problems, the sordid little business and the burn furs came to arise. A factionalized furry fandom was a nasty sight. While in modern times we have not had a similar experience, we have another symptom. Drama. Pure, unregulated drama. Alt-furry, furry raiders, anti-furs, rainforest, and heaven forbid incidents like Kiro. This fandom has become so synonymous with drama that it's literally a meme. Furries have always had drama, but never quite like this. The drama in recent years has been unparalleled. Many instances of drama can usually be traced back to one or a few loud individuals, almost similar to what happens in normal society. Twitter, YouTube, and many social platforms have to deal with the same kind of problem. These platforms, though, are larger and will always likely be larger than the fandom, but it lets you know how big we're getting, that we're experiencing these same kind of problems. The expanse of furry has led to a massive amount of people with differing political views and stances to accumulate. While bringing politics so heavily into furry is a relatively new thing, it was only made easier by the divides created between its members. Furry has been fracturing, and that's not exactly a good thing. In what seems like a lifetime ago, I made a video named the top 20 furries I look up to. While I still do agree a lot with this list, the video quality has aged very poorly. My number one slot was a humble gray muzzle by the name of Grubs Grizzly. Grubs runs, as far as I know, the only real advice column in the fandom, and regularly handles delicate and personal topics. He's helped me on numerous occasions. There was a very simple but big question someone asked him. What are some of the problems do you feel need to be addressed regarding the fandom, and how do you feel we can solve them? Was the question. He goes on to talk about something he says will be discussed heavily in his upcoming project, The Furry Book. This article is the primary inspiration behind this video and opened my eyes to the problem. The root of all these problems, the unregulated growth of the fandom. It's unavoidable, but because of how rough it's been, there have been a number of nasty side effects. He likens it to a city with unregulated growth. There were going to be areas with super contrasting environments. There were playful positive areas, and then there were nasty dark ones. As he calls them, the furry ghettos, which is admittedly a very accurate description. With the fandom fracturing in the way it is, these groups are becoming further and further apart. The overlap is dying down, and certain people are finding themselves secluded. I wholeheartedly believe this is why many of the big fandom exits have occurred, because of people falling into these pits. Once in, they begin to get disconnected from other sides of the fandom, until they believe what they are seeing is the fandom. One of the most well-known loud exits of the fandom was Cothrix at the end of last year. His exit video describes all the problems he had with the fandom and the categories he puts them in. He says at the end of the video he believes every furry falls into one of these groups, and I personally highly disagree. However, with his An Apology video, among other things, he goes and discusses some of the reasons behind why the video was made the way it was. In short, it was to burn bridges, a video fueled by hatred. It would make a lot of sense for this kind of perception to belong to someone who has spent way too long in the shady sides of the fandom, and has been isolated to them. There are plenty of other lesser-known furs too, ones whose message will never be as loudly heard as they may have once wished. With the ever-growing base of the fandom, we are beginning to see the fandom split into subgroups. A lot of these can be localized to their platforms, as it is a main way furries congregate. Many niche platforms develop bubble communities, Furry Amino included, as I can attest to. Anthropomorphism is as diverse as you can get, with the fandom being centric on the entire thing that covers so many different things. I once said the reasons people here are endless, and sometimes those reasons are how people congregate to each other. What is happening is different parts of the fandom are slowly growing apart. There is overlap for some furs, and there is also plenty of isolated furs. Imagine each as a different bubble. Congoers, the YouTube scene, Discord, Furry Amino, artists, furry musicians. There is many strings between them, but they are definitely their own spaces. As the fandom continues to grow, these will only become more apparent. Furry fandom is highly unlikely to ever die. The name itself is engraved on the fandom, used to describe the broader community. The community will most assuredly continue to get broader, and the definition will remain unchanged. It will, however, push its meaning to the limit, as once a sort of critical mass is achieved, the fandom will split more than ever before. The fandom is already very split, with many subgroups tied together only by a handful of individuals. Niche groups will continue to grow, and the popular groups such as YouTubers and fursuiters will likely become an even larger face of the fandom. Unless there is a course correction, the fandom itself could very well fall into a heavier political divide. The more people that fall into each side of the spectrum, the less incentive there is to reunite. As more people come in, there will also continue to be an increase in problem causers and, by extension, drama. Furry will become a more well-known phenomenon, and we want to make sure the community is ready for it. As of right now, the road is still steady, and we have time to prepare for the future. As mainstream as anthropomorphism is, I don't think the fandom itself will ever go mainstream. The fandom has been through this in the past, and it's time for the next generation to pick up the mantle. Younger furs are cropping up every day, and this next generation of furry needs to mature, just like the generation before us did, and find a way to improve the community. Over the last couple of years, things have been getting rough, but there is light beginning to shine. I know that this fandom can repair, one paw at a time. This is my most meta video so far, picking apart the underlying cause of so many of the fandom's issues. Alas, the cause is a natural one and cannot be avoided. It is our job to make sure we prepare the community for the future. Making this video has given me an idea about trying to make a visual representation of the fandom structure, as daunting as that seems. I might show it off in a future video. Until next time, when I'm going to be revisiting Conference, stay tuned.